Hey Stacy,
Hello. Hello.
how are you?
Good. Just us?
So far, and
It's a nice background.
I might have to change rooms. So, how did Dan take the session last week? Did you talk more about that?
Yeah, yeah, he liked it. I don't want to talk on a recorded call.
You don't have to say anything personal. I was just curious, whether I mean he's a
Yeah,
newcomer.
well, right. But I kind of, in general, don't we have this thing that we like to let people speak for themselves?
I don't personally
I do.
subscribe to that,
Oh,
So
I do.
I've
I
not
like
ever felt that
people to
that's the case
themselves.
because
Okay, good
people
to
ask
know.
me.
I feel that way.
Yeah, every time this has been brought up, I say there are certain circumstances where I feel that that's not necessarily mandatory.
Hi, Kayla.
Hi, I took my video off because I'm cooking. How are you
Hey,
guys doing?
Kayla. You said you're what? Cooking?
Yeah.
Uh, hmm. I did bring a topic, and I'm hoping that we can get some good ideas on. I'd like to collect some good ideas around this one topic because it's actually something I feel I'm going to take action on.
What one topic is that?
I'll introduce it again when we get more people, but what I've really been thinking about for at least the last 3 years is if we're going to consider what kind of future we want, we should really be talking to the people who are going to be there. And I've also felt too strongly that, we're too striated with a number of voices all in a certain age range. So what I'm curious about is how do we reach out to those who are whatever they're called, Gen Z, millennials, teens,
There's
Gen X,
something
Gen
wrong with
Z,
your
Gen Y.
sound, Sam. Sam, there's something wrong with your sound,
You can't hear
and I
me?
couldn't hear the last part. I can hear you. There's static that comes in, so the last, and the squeaking too. Static
Yeah,
and
that's
squeaking.
the yeah, sorry. So let me do this. Let me get to a different room. Okay? Hang on one second.
Okay. Hi, Tease.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. Sam just
I'm
went
just,
to another room because there was something wrong with the audio or his background or whatever.
well, I'm going to make a cuppa, so I'll be back shortly.
microphone is double now.
Testing, testing, testing. How's the audio coming here?
Hearing, hearing, hearing. How is your audio?
All right, then I'm going to kill my other session here.
But you're co-host, so if you kill your host, you
Yeah.
can't be co-host
I'm
anymore.
going to make myself host first. That. Reclaim host. Here we go.
What happened to Jaswinder?
Well, I'm already recording there. So as long as my video and sound still continue to come through, I'm going to let that system go because that session go because it's actually recording on that machine. But if it's a bandwidth issue, I'll have to kill it and then record again on the cloud and then stitch those two pieces together. Okay, that's what I will do. Anyway, sorry, Stace. I was in the middle of answering your question, which is what is my focus today?
So
but
you might as well start. You might as well only everybody. A lot of people seem to be here, so it's kind of good to start at the beginning.
Cool. Well, usually we do that after we have a round of optional check-ins. So I don't know if you've already done it while I was trying to go upstairs. Anybody still want to check in? Anybody want to say hello?
Yes.
Checked in.
Okay, Alex and Tees.
Yes, I'm feeling fine. Don't know why Jaswinder left, but I might know, but I'm not sure. Because I was pushing him too far, maybe with knowledge about universal basic income and so on, and showing him information from Rutger Bregman, who has ideas on universal basic income. And he also is against, saying socialism against capitalism and so on. So this is a confronting message for Jaswinder, maybe. But I hope he will come up, and maybe tomorrow he comes with unblocking.
You said Jaswinder actually joined and then left?
Yes, that was Stacy's. Stacy saw he left. I saw he was available.
Yeah, he left, but I can't say why he left, and I wouldn't say why he left. And
he didn't say why, so I just have my ideas, but I'm not sure. So I have to see him tomorrow.
yeah, my knowledge about Jaswinder would lead me to say that that's not why he left.
Yeah, it would be surprising to me if that were the reason.
Well, I wouldn't leave if you brought up capitalism and communism and socialism and dialism, whatever. But Jaswinder's got some trigger points. I know that much when it comes to politics and ideology. But he'll be back shortly. He's not one to back down from a good debate on anything, any subject. So he'll be back shortly, and I'll be back shortly. I'm making a cuppa, but that's my chicken. Over.
Okay. And let's see, we've got Stacy, we've got Kayla, and myself. Stace.
Yes.
Colin too. Colin is here too.
Colin is here? Okay, Colin. Okay, all right. Colin, you want to check in? Stacy, you want to check in?
I'll check in.
Okay.
I'm already feeling very uneasy. But I was before I came here. There were like lots of little things going on with Facebook. Nothing that I was upset about. So actually, well, I should wait till Alex is here. But I wanted to just, talk about something that happened. Not that it's a big deal, but Alex had put up a post on Facebook. And a few people responded to it, and that's all fine. But then he changed it in a well-meaning way. He changed it to reflect the issues that myself and another Alex had written. But what that then did is put my comments, it made them it sounds silly or meaningless because you couldn't see what I was responding to. Mm-hmm. So the whole idea of, so that was one thing that was in my mind. Then when we started the call, the idea of speaking for somebody else came up between me and Sam. And then to hear Teese put out a reason for why he thinks Jaswinder left when nothing happened on screen for any of us to assume that. All those things, they're just like, they're really touchy points for me, because one of the things that at least I feel is the biggest challenge we face is this misinformation, misinterpretation, judgment, all those things playing into our daily lives. So I feel I have to like decompress a little bit. And with that, I'm complete. Otherwise, everything's good and I'm happy to be here.
Okay, thanks for that. If I may, would I be okay asking questions about that later?
Of course.
Okay. Ms. Kayla, would you like to check in?
Yes. So just letting you know, I might have to get out early, and it's because, you know, not too early, maybe like 9:30, 9:45, my time, of course. But I have a wellness festival. Yay! It's an international wellness festival that I'm participating in. People from other countries are going to be there. I'll be teaching my dance, so I'm very excited about that. There's an 11-year-old teacher from the Ukraine that's going to be teaching at 10 o'clock, so I kind of want to see what she's all about. So that's my happy check-in for today. I'm excited, nervous, and I kind of have an idea of what to do, but I haven't quite nailed it down yet. So hope you all are having a good morning, evening, day, and I'm looking forward to this session, Sam. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I like the fact that you mentioned the 11-year-old. That's actually relevant to what I wanted to say today. Hey, Alex, I see your finger, but can we let Colin check in if he wants to first?
Yeah, how's it going? I don't have a whole lot to say. I think it'd be an interesting day. I guess I've been in retrospective mode a bit, trying to go backwards and see what I might have been able to do better and try to do that. Because I find as well, I have a hard time explaining well what it is I'm trying to do. And I think a lot of it takes presentation, demonstration. So yeah, if it's not clear, then I don't understand quite well what I'm trying to do either. So it's a bit of exploration. So I guess that's the kind of space I'm in as usual. So continue on, and thank you.
Okay, so before I check in, actually, let me check in first and then get into the meat of things. Okay. What I've been doing to myself is I've been almost, well, self-admittedly, I've been doing to myself is not giving myself a lot of sleep, but for a good reason. I actually have been so focused on one of these things that I'm doing at work. And the CEO has kind of helped me focus because he's basically setting time aside every day at the end of the day around 4:30 or 5 o'clock every day for half an hour to check on progress of this one particular initiative that he's asked me to take on. So it's actually something that I've felt strongly about for years and then very intensely about for at least the last several months. And he's given me an opportunity to do some prototyping, which I think I've mentioned before. And that's led to some pretty strong interest by other people and some customers. So he's actually feeling that this is a very important company initiative. So now he's very anxious to see it launched. So it's a privilege and, it's kudos to be recognized that this is important. And also it's, it's either goes from here to there, really quickly. Once it, is a good thing, and now we want to see it launch. So anyway, that's kept me very, very busy. So part of it has to do with me allowing myself and he allowing me to really get back and, writing some code and showing how things work. Fairly simple code. It's not very complicated code. But it does some pretty simple things that make some impact that can really communicate, what it is that this is trying to do. And so since I've not been directly coding now for several years, actually more than decades, it's really fun going back. And I think I've mentioned to you before how different, coding and programming is today than it was decades ago. So I feel like I'm always catching up, and therefore I'm always, learning things, trying to read things, trying to practice things. So one of the things I've been doing at night is I've actually been watching a lot of videos. My teens, starting with my son when he was 10 years old, would watch YouTube videos. And back then I didn't understand why so much time, but he said, I'm learning to do things. So one of the things he learned was how to play guitar with no teacher other than the YouTube videos. Then he learned how to do some woodworking techniques. He had taken woodworking in middle school, but still he learned more, on YouTube. And then he, at some middle school age, posted a YouTube video about how he created this one thing. It's not important what it is, but it's a woodworking thing that was fairly simple, that did something, nothing, there was no other video on it like what he created on the internet. So in about 3 years, he had collected hundreds of dollars of YouTube advertising revenue simply because hundreds of thousands of people had watched this video. So I didn't for a long time really appreciate the power of YouTube and what it could do. And then lately, my daughter has been drawing a lot, and she's had no formal instruction. She's had no drawing classes in any of the schools she's ever been to, but she draws like 20 hours a day. And when she's drawing, she's watching other YouTube artists actually draw. And her drawing, I don't know, I'm going to be a little bit of a proud father. I'm going to send a link later on to her Instagram account where she actually draws. I've shared it with Harry, by the way. And Harry, I thought, was very nice and polite. He gave some very positive feedback on it. So it's really fascinating to me that you can learn so much on videos. So one of the things I have been doing, and I now finally appreciate, is I watch videos about coding, software engineering, programming techniques, that sort of thing. And I'm learning a heck of a lot. Believe me, it has so much. So that's why, in a long roundabout story, I apologize for how long it's taken. That's why I've actually not been getting very much sleep. I usually get about 3 or 4 hours of sleep every night because, I'm learning so much by practicing and watching and doing and practicing. That's really a different kind of a mode to be in that I actually appreciate discovering, but I discovered really late. The power of YouTube is very amazing. There's a lot of crap on it, obviously, and there's a lot of crap on other video sites, but YouTube is remarkable in what it can help me do. Anyway, sorry, that's a very long check-in for why I only got about 3 or 4 hours sleep last night. So we'll see whether I can focus and whether I can stay focused and help us focus. So anybody else want to check in before I start asking a few questions and then launch into the focus topic? I think everybody has checked in, and Just Winder has not rejoined. Okay. All right. I wanted to explain myself a little bit with Stacy, and I don't know if this is going to trigger you anymore or whether it might help alleviate some of that.
I'm good now. I'm all good now.
Okay. But I do feel like I still want to address one of the points, which is, do we speak for others? I think this notion that you should not speak for others in contexts has a lot to do with the integrity of the person who's speaking and the integrity of the person who's listening. I think that just as there are objects in the universe that we can have discourse about, people are those, objects as well. And so just to avoid an entire class of objects simply because they're not present, to me seems a little arbitrary, a little weird to me. Now, if you want to speak about them for them as if it were true, yes, I completely understand that. Okay, I would not want to do that. I would not want others to do that about me. And I know Doug also, and I'm saying it right now, okay, because I've heard Doug say this verbatim, okay? He would not want others to do so as well. So I'm doing that right now. I'm wondering whether or not that triggers you. Because so long as I say, this is what I've heard, it's a fact, okay? And it's available for anyone to verify, and I'm on record with this, and you can, say, hey, that's not what I heard. I'm open to all of that, okay? But the fact that I heard it is not invalid simply because Doug is not here. So that's the objectivity that I would like to see with that practice. That's why in the behavior experiment spreadsheet and in other occasions, especially in unblocking, whenever people say, I'm not going to speak for someone who's not here, or let's not speak for someone who's not here, which, by the way, is also power over. If we say, let's not do this, okay, then I would say, why, okay? I mean, it's on record. We've got the video. He said it many times, what's objectionable about that? So that's my position. The flip side of that is on the side of the listener, the audience. If the, I would say, mistake is to say every utterance I hear is true, then of course it'll be dangerous. If I say something about Doug and it turns out to not be true, and the default assumption is everything I say is true, yes, that would lead one astray, okay? And that would possibly create strife and differences, et cetera, et cetera. I don't take that, though. I don't take every utterance that person says, any person says, as true. I say, does it make sense based on what I know? Does it make sense on, what everybody else has verified? Does it make sense with science, with nature, with everything else? And if so, then I'll generally lean towards believing it, and no statement is ever accepted 100%. On the other hand, if it's like apparently false, as are many of the things that 45 says, and yes, I'm ascribing it to 45, and he is not here, but I'll say it anyway, okay? Then it's a valid way to talk. It's valid to say, yes, everything that I know and that's been taught in school and that science says, and what most smart people say is that's a pile of shit. I'm willing to say that, okay? And I don't feel bad at all that he's not here for me to say it to directly. So I want to take that position also on the side of the audience, the listener, to say there's a responsibility here not to take everything everybody says as quote unquote true. But if it's pretty much in accordance with the preponderance of other evidence that you've got, consider it. Don't take anything as an absolute. So that's why I say I personally do not ascribe to this practice of let's not talk about anybody who's not here. I think it's perfectly fine so long as we do it in integrity. So that's my position on this. Sorry for taking so long. Yeah, Stacy, please.
Okay, so let me specify that what I'm talking about is one person being asked somebody else's opinion when their opinion is not on the record. To say that, well, then whoever's speaking, that's on the record, that requires a person who's not here to go back to find out what was said that was inaccurate. And there's no way that once something's been put out there, you can get that back. So that's what I'm talking about. Now, if you said to me, well, what did, last week, what did so-and-so say about? Then yeah, I can say to you, to the best of my recollection, I think they said A, B, and C. But that's not the same as, that's like if somebody said to me, well, how did Sam respond when you told him this? Like, what about people that don't know me, that can't really gauge, well, how likely is her judgment going to be accurate? So that's the issue I have, because some things you can't really take back, and most people don't have enough information to know. Again, the more there's questioning back and forth, the more it becomes, less harmful, in my opinion.
Okay, thanks. I don't think I disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing cut. I don't think any issues ever cut and dry.
You mean in absolute terms, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I would say there's possibly a handful of things that I'm willing to go with that are cut and dry, but I'm willing to question them, if somebody really brings it up. But unless somebody actually brings up some pretty compelling things, I have no reason to question gravity at the moment. I have no question to question certain other aspects of scientific thought. But again, that's a contentious thought, but I personally don't feel a need to question some of those at the moment. Alex, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm thinking about the fact that if we don't say anything unless we know that it's factually correct and true, there's quite a lot of stuff that we won't be able to talk about. So if we use the best sources of information to verify our beliefs, we'll have a better chance of getting along with the group. And if we can't say something nice about somebody, then it's just gossip, isn't it? I think.
Well, I will admit, I do say a lot of things that are not nice about Trump, 45. And I don't consider that gossip.
Well, that's an exception.
But it's also very clear. It's also very clear to everybody watching that that's your opinion. Like nobody watching thinks that you know that because you just had a 10-minute conversation with him.
Right.
And to Alex's point, I think just, starting off by saying, I'm not sure, but it might be, and then giving your reasons why you think that, I think that makes it okay too. It's not the same as saying, this is why this happened. And I've come across a lot of people that do that. And then when you question them, and I don't mean here, I mean in my life, all through my life, and usually it's with men, where they tell you why something works, even though they don't really know that, they just suspect that, but they don't bother to tell you, I think it's because. They just say it so confident, and
Yeah,
that's a problem.
There was a book, Dale Carnegie wrote a book about how to win friends and influence people. And that's what he called the book. And in it, he's talking about that in the book. And he said that you can preface something to say, even if you're ultimately sure that it's factual and true, you can preface it by saying, I could be wrong. I could be wrong, but blah, 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 which is what you suggested. So that's good advice, I think.
If I may lean into this even a little further, may I?
Of course.
I felt, or I recall, that you felt that way partially in response to something T said about Jaswinder.
Yes.
T, I was wondering if you had a response. No? Yeah, I didn't feel like Tees was saying something as an absolute fact.
No response because it was about someone who is not here. So I just met this. It depends on me talking with the person that I spoke about. So that's all.
Yeah.
I mean, but this has come up other times because I felt this other times with different people when somebody would say, I mean, like I'll use Tammy, for example. Somebody would say why Tammy wasn't there. And I had happened to have spoken to her. So I knew that what they were saying, they thought was the reason. I knew it wasn't true. Then I would speak up because to me, that's like being a conversational advocate. You bring in facts for the person in their absence. But I just think I just know in my personal life and my personal experiences, lots of misunderstandings have happened because one person told another person that another person was upset about them without any background. Because somebody gets up and leaves the room doesn't mean they left the room because you upset them. Might have nothing to do with you at all.
Yep. For the record, when I leave the room unexpectedly, it's usually because of my dogs. Okay, so.
And I don't think anybody here, hold on, I just want to say something. I don't think anybody here would think that you would get up abruptly and leave the room because you were upset and mad. Not that that couldn't happen, but that would not be our first impulse, I don't think. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but that's my suspicion.
I'll confirm that. I'm more likely to stay and actually, lean in and possibly, poke somebody and make them pissed off.
Right.
Than to actually leave.
And that's how I happen to see Jaswinder as well, for the record.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm always curious about that particular topic, but for now, can that conclude, or do we have more on that topic? Okay, cool. I have a focus topic that I'd like to bring to this conversation. And so it's what? I think it's, wow, we've gone half an hour already. Okay, all right. So the thing that's been on my mind ever since the proposal submission was sent in almost 3 years ago now is there are lots of voices not included. There are voices of people who don't have the time to spend writing proposals. There are a lot of voices who don't have the time to spend 2 hours each day on a weekday or a weekend day to lean into some of these topics and explore and be sort of in this um, loose conversation without very many rules. There's been a lot of people who don't have access to internet at this high bandwidth who are not represented. But the class that I most am concerned about is those voices who have to live in the future that we're all talking about or intending to talk about on a daily basis. And by that, I mean our kids, Gen X's, the Gen Y's, the Gen Z's, the millennials. I don't even know where all those demarcations, start and end. But I think there's a whole bucket of names applied to people who are younger than me. And I am really interested in how they engage. And I alluded to it a little bit just in my check-in by saying, hey, they do things that I'm only now beginning to appreciate, such as learning from YouTube, such as this past week, buying out 1 million tickets with Trump's rally and, having me shaking my head saying, I didn't think of that. I didn't do that. Remarkable. I like it, And all of a sudden now, last night, Ronnie and I are listening to the BTS band or group or, singers because all of a sudden now they're on my radar. And, now we're admiring what their followers do. And not only that, the more I learn, and I don't learn very much about them, but what I learned is in the Korean pop culture, I guess there was somebody 10, 15 years ago who said to their followers and fans, hey, don't lavish attention on me. Go do something socially good, like go help a charity or go do something else. And that has been a part of Korean pop culture since then. And I thought, wow, that's remarkable. I can't remember that kind of response happening with any other pop artists. Now, I don't follow pop artists, but all I know is that doesn't come to my attention, okay? And so I've not heard, and I'll just name a whole bunch of them, Michael Jackson, did he do that? Beyonce, did he do that? Neil Diamond, a long time ago, did he do that? Even though I like some of their songs and, and productions. So I'm thinking this is a really interesting part of an internationally different youth culture or younger generation culture that is teaching some of us new techniques, new ways of being in the world, new ways of social action. And I'm actually thinking that's remarkable, So they're using the internet, they're using their collective voice in a way that I didn't think of. And they actually took action and they made an impact that's made a very strong statement. And I don't think anybody saw it coming. So I'm just highlighting these points by saying, basically to support that I really think the next generations feel strongly about how the world is and they want to make a difference. And I think our mistake, my mistake, is we want to invite them to this forum. They've got their own forums. They've got their own methods. They're on what? TikTok, WhatsApp, Line. I don't even know what else is out there that I'm not on, and I'm on actually quite a few, Some of them I actually would like to propose for our consumption, our usage at times. So what I'm thinking is I got to take a more outreach kind of position to sort of reach them where they are rather than inviting them to this forum, which is where we are. If we're going to say something, if I'm going to say something, let's take my daughter, Veronica, for example, okay? Or Kayla's son who just showed up, right? Let's take them and say, hey, would you like to come and talk to us about how you feel about the future? Number one, they don't know us. Number two, we're a lot older than they are. Number 3, we're part of the problem. Number 4, I don't even know if they would feel comfortable showing up in this kind of a forum. I don't even know if they could sit still for 2 hours. I don't know any of that. Okay. But their voices are important. So I'm thinking, how do I reach out to them? So I would like to do 2 things. I would like to see if this resonates with anyone, and if you actually have ideas for how we reach out to them or have them reach out to us. And 2, I would like to present some ideas that I've been thinking about for about 2-3 weeks on this topic. I mentioned 2 or 3 weeks ago, I had a topic I wanted to bring here, and it's been on my mind ever since. And I felt so strongly about it that I'm actually working on a plan of what to do next. And I wrote up a blog entry about it. Some of you who follow me may have seen it. But if not, I'll send you the link later on after we've collected some ideas here and see what is up. And Tees, if you're looking for it right now, please don't let it influence what you say. Okay, so my first question, number 1, is how do you feel about the future and how we want to have this conversation, these dialogues, these forums, these communities, whatever you call it? How can they be more intergenerational if, in fact, you think intergenerationality is a good thing? Or should I just leave good enough alone, well enough alone, and say, hey, they're taking action. They made more of an impact than I have. I'm 45. What makes it, important that I connect with them? Why should that even be the case? So I'm interested in all that kind of feedback as a first round. Over. Alex?
So I'm thinking about a link up. When I can't communicate with a young person, I'll select one young person to make suggestions to, because that young person might have the ability that I don't have to talk to other young people in his age, in the same age group, about that action or about that tribe, about that community endeavour that brings global people together in a virtual, organic, open source network. Over.
Stacey?
So I agree with you 100%. And, this past month, I've really been withdrawn from social media compared to how much time I used to spend. But I have a number of 20-something connections because I am amazed by them. And I do love hearing what they have to say. And frankly, they've been more open to some of the things that I usually think about. So I could put you in touch with some of them. What happens is I might meet them on Facebook, but then they'll move to like Telegram or some of the other channel, and, I don't go there. It's just too much. It's too overwhelming. But I have a couple of people that I really think you'd be interested in meeting. And I have introduced some people to some of I've tried to weave some of the generations together, but I have 2 people in mind that I'd like to introduce you to.
I'd love to do that. If they'd be willing to talk to me, I would love to do that. Yeah.
I think they would because they're networkers themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else? Kayla?
So the first thing that came to mind was reaching out to teachers and parents. When you're talking about somebody in the generation of my children, that was the first thing that came to mind, teachers and parents. And I do know a couple of teachers that would be open-minded. The second thing is I know several people in their 20s that are very altruistic. People who are in the AmeriCorps, people who have sought out nonprofit organizations too. So there's organizations like that where the youth in their 20s, they're very open-minded. And just like you, Stacey, I go to them for ideas and fashion tips and all kinds of cool stuff. And then another thing I like to do is engage with people who are in their 20s and just do something that might make me a little uncomfortable because I'm old, but go to their little circle and support them. So I feel like youth enjoy that, especially from somebody who's older, because they do have this black and white oh, that's my dad or my mom, or, you know, that's just somebody who's a little older. So yes, I'm sorry, those are dog sounds. But yeah, with that, I'm complete. Over.
Anyone else before I go again? Colin, you still there?
Yeah, I'm still there. I find both these topics today very, very interesting, but I'm just holding back my comment. But yeah, I do align with these ideas of how do you include people in the conversation, and I always go to the context. You know, is it an important conversation, which I assume it is, and I don't actually think inside the idea of one platform. I haven't for a long time. I'm surprised you haven't found the power of YouTube earlier for beginner intermediate knowledge for the most part. And also I would suggest some paid programs as well if you want to actually dive into something, because it can be better, you know, for relatively little money. And that brings me to the other thing, what you're willing to invest. So time is very important. Money is basically time is money, they say. And if it is important and is worth putting your time and money into, it's good at looking at how you're trying to focus that effort and not, how do you say, spread yourself too thin. It's very easy to spread yourself too thin. And I guess the last thought I had, I guess I'm going to say them all, is it comes down to looking at what attracts people. After all, the other aforementioned things are in play. What attracts people? And I look to tradition of what's worked for the human race, or monkey minds, or however you want to think about it. And you can look at entertainment industry, you can look at religion, you can look at sports, and you can get a lot of clues on some of the things. So it just can't be all information. There actually has to be an entertainment element to it, for sure. And in what I'm trying to do to look at in having conversations and understanding is concentrating more on the human element, not the personal element. You know, I want to know who you are and where you come from and what you do, but more to the fact of what we first started talking about in this conversation, about how do you manage these triggers and things. I wanted to mention a few things about some experiences I've had in this group in different contexts, with people present, with people not present. And the fact I tried to handle it straight on and I was unable to do so. And then it just, things do not happen the way I expect them to happen. So I think having a certain amount of recognition of, it does matter who's in the conversation, and people should be, and I use the word should be self-aware of how they're participating. And if they cross the line and trigger somebody, they should be open to that signal to reflect on how and why they did that. And if it's in an open forum like this, in order for it to be safe, I also think it should be sidelined with the results come back to the group, possibly. I'm not even sure I'm 100% down with the idea that everything's recorded. But if I agree to that, then I tailor my participation to that, which could be a good thing. But yeah, I think overall there is no one forum. And I think the more we realize that, the better off we are. Thank you.
So there's at least a couple of things I remember from what everybody said that I'd like to respond to, but anybody you want to respond?
Well,
Who was that?
sorry, it was me. I dropped something.
Okay. So a couple of points. I think, so Colin referenced something that you said, Stacy, that I'd also like to respond to. which was that someone, and I believe you identified it as Alex, made a Facebook posting, and that you made a comment, and then that the posting was edited. So this just recalls one of the practices that I learned from one of my mentors, Doug Engelbart, which is that nothing should ever be deleted, nothing should ever be revised, no matter how trivial, because of exactly the phenomenon that you experienced, which is if something happens and you respond to it in a certain way, and then that original post was then changed, then that of course changes how your commentary comes across. And for the best understanding of things to be available to all, Doug always had this notion that, you can revise with new versions, but you never delete the old version. That was his part of inventing version control, version management. So in his software, the stuff that he used to build, yes, you could actually layer on top of each other with different versions and different commentary, but the original thing never went away. So I have a corollary to this in the practice of recording videos. I think that, this is part of keeping what was true, keeping what actually happened for the record. And I ascribe to that very strongly myself. I do understand that other people have different thoughts and feelings about it. But that's my own personal view, is that what I do, however stupid, I will not go back and try to erase from the record. That is something I did, and I will take accountability for that. And the point is, can I learn from that? Can I do better myself personally? But I don't ever feel a right to go back and say, oh, well, that was stupid of me. Please delete that video so that I don't look stupid to other people. No, I think that I was stupid, if indeed that was true. And if I was stupid, I should be, recorded as being stupid, Now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 1 year from now, if somebody says, oh, well, Sam committed that mistake and now he's doing something better, so he's learned, that would be part of the record for people to see. And I think that would be okay with me, that there's a history of me learning and being stupid at, time t, and then being a little bit smarter at time t plus delta t, that's okay with me. And I've made plenty of mistakes. Even here in GCC, I've done it many, many times. So anyway, that's one thing. Let me say one more thing before I give way again. And so there is another corollary, which is my sometimes often stated rant, which is copy is evil. Copy is evil in the way that if you create different copies of things which themselves can be changed, such as some forms of email, some forms of documents, some forms of videos, then eventually one doesn't know how that was, let's say, altered or misrepresented if it's not kept as the record or something, okay? Now, libraries are an interesting case, but, what I'm really basically trying to say is if you know where to go for the source that's the authoritative source, whether it's YouTube or whether it's the Library of Alexandria or whether it's, a book, then you know where a thing was said, you know who said it, in what context it happened in. There's less question about whether it was misrepresented, whether it was photoshopped, whether it was altered in some way. And in emails, this is a particular trigger of mine. Anytime you send emails to more than one person and then that person follows up, but perhaps to a different distribution or forwards it to a different distribution, and then that thread takes on its life of its own, I just don't understand why in 30 or 40 years we've not gotten smarter about that. And it wastes electrons. Now, I understand electrons are cheap, but it still wastes electrons. Anyway, that's my little rant on revisions of history, which I like to keep pristine. I like to keep the historical record pristine and say, hey, if you really want to say something on top of it, then point to it, or make sure that people understand it's a different revision. That is my practice. That's what I will do. Okay. That's point number one. And before you respond to that, could I actually respond to your point number 2, which is these 20-year-olds or others that you are offering to put me in touch with? I would love that. I would really love that. I would like to say a story about Veronica and her friends. I've said here and elsewhere that I have what I appreciate as a uniquely, well, for me it's unique because I don't personally have that in my consciousness. I have a very good relationship with Veronica, to the extent that, I've made her a promise. She can ask me anything about me and I will answer it honestly. And I think I've, held up to that, and she believes it. And so when she has her friends over, it's interesting. She has 2 friends, and I'm speaking about someone who is not here. I'll just be very clear about that, okay? She has 2 friends, both named Kylie, both spelled Kyle-E-E. And they're such good friends. One of them she's known since probably, early elementary school, if not earlier, okay? And then the other she has only known for the last 4 years because she met her here in Washington State. But the early Kylie, who now lives in Spokane, also here in Washington, has always called me Dad. And when I found out further that she had lost her father really, really young, and not only that, her mother had given her up. She doesn't actually have parents. She lived with her grandparents for such a long time that when she saw that I had a good relationship with Ronnie, she just started calling me Dad. And I just felt really, even now I have tingles, when I say that. And Kylie, when Ronnie got to know this Kylie here in Stanwood, the short form of the story is she calls me Mr. Dad. She doesn't call me Dad. She calls me Mr. Dad. She actually does have a father that she really, really loves, but her parents are split up. And she lives with her mom most of the time, so she has a stepfather. So she's got a stepfather, which she never refers to as Dad. Whenever I have asked about her dad, she always talks about the father in Squid, which is about 3-4 hours away. But whenever she was over here, she calls me Mr. Dad, and I consider that very special. Also, I don't ask for that. I can't ever ask for something like that. But it's just, it does tingle my. I feel tingling sensations when I even talk about this because I really appreciate that. So I have few opportunities, though, to talk to those in the younger generations. And part of it is that I've chosen to live in such a reclusive location that hasn't hurt Ronnie, though, in how she connects with her friends. She's with her friends online probably 18 to 20 hours a day already. So I've asked her whether she feels too remote here. She says no. She actually loves being out here, which is a surprise to me. I thought she would last about a year or 2 and then ask to go back to live with her mom, but she's actually been quite happy here. So anyway, I very much love and enjoy these conversations with younger folks. Oh, one more story. One of Ronnie's friends here at Stanwood, a fellow named Stefan, is as up to date on politics and 45 and Bernie Sanders and UBI and global health and as I am. And he can talk, point to point to point to point, in conversation with me when I talk to him or ask him about these kind of questions. So the young generation does have those who are very on top of things, are very, very concerned, very aware, and very conversant if you talk to them. And that's what I would like to do more of. Okay. So anyway, that's my response to a couple of things you brought up. Colin, I think you brought up a couple of things, but I don't remember exactly what they are. So I'd have to go back and reconstruct my line of thought if I was to respond.
I can help you there, but I won't take a lot. I was just talking about different things that could entice or bring on conversation.
Right.
And when it's important. Also, you were mentioning about a trigger that Stacy had about related thing about deleting or massaging content, specifically what Alex had done. I've got a lot to say about the deleting and massaging of data. I'm not a lot, but I'll let anybody else go first because other people were mentioned, not me.
Yeah, I just really want to quickly say for the record that in the case I was talking about, it was for a good reason. Alex went back and changed it because he had incorporated the suggestions of the people commenting. And the second thing I wanted to say is he also mentioned within it that he had edited it. So I just wanted to put that out there. And it gave me an opportunity to comment as well.
Yeah, I appreciate
Okay.
that.
Okay, I feel like I got the space to go then. Everybody's cleared that up. I think it comes down to what the tool can support. Like Alex had to be mindful to say, I've edited this. Please read, previous comments in a new light, or this may affect the chain of the comments. And if I actually change something that's important, I actually contact the people with the private message and say, this has got to change. I think that's only happened to me once or twice. But I've actually I actually contacted the person and said, let's clean up this thread. This is not what I intended, not where I wanted to go. So that brings me to the point of how many different spaces does a person have to share, like different kinds of shareable spaces. So I'm assuming Sam might be quite an open book. So he might have just one space and pretty much I'll share anything because I'm just somebody on the earth who, if anybody can learn from my experience, that's what I want. So anything you want to know, just ask. And so I think other people may have up to 4 different shareable spaces. Maybe intimate stuff is kind of a taboo of society. We don't really get into intimate stuff in a public forum, generally speaking, unless it's, that's that gang and that group's norms. So it comes down to what are your norms, I think, and what are your boundaries for conversation. So the two things together, what types of spaces, shareable spaces do you have, like from private to public? What degree is that? And if knowing that you're being recorded, does that mean that other spaces are not going to be shared that could have been shared? For example, Gertrude does a show where she doesn't record it, so people are able to share more freely, who wouldn't normally do so in a public forum. So yeah, it comes down to what's public and what's private. And even if you make an agreement that everything's public, does that really mean that it's public? And how do you clear up that misconceptions that are formed? That's another topic. And the tool, if it does keep track of the edits and the history, it goes a long way to help that. But Facebook is hopeless in trying to be a medium. I find text in general is a good medium when you're kind of on the same page and you're just tweaking ideas. But when you're giving large ideas, it takes a lot more space to not be misunderstood. And sometimes it's good to have a face-to-face where people can interact and have active listening and question each other back and forth to make sure that they know what they're talking about. Because it's very easy to get misunderstood. And in this group, particularly the talking about other people stuff, I think is a valuable thing to do if you're going to have that channel to keep that, to clarify that information. So if the person isn't here, how do you keep a side channel open to clarify that information, assuming that it's important, right?
It's 9 hours.
It is 9 hours. So, yeah, I do think it's what the tool can support, the level of privacy you share if it's being recorded, and the way to follow up on misconceptions to know that there should be a deliberate way to do that. So if I say something, if I remember Stacy was hosting a show or somebody was, and Stacy said something about me and I felt it was kind of half right, but it was totally misleading to what I meant. And so how do I at that point say, this is a live flow? How do I clear that up? How do I, when somebody is starting to get aggressive and, starting to make accusations against my character or what my intentions are, how do I say, okay, well, I've had enough of that. Should I be mindful enough to just know, well, this doesn't generally end well, I'll just leave, cut and run? Or, are there any moderation rules in effect in this group? Or is it just the norms of assuming that we're all good people, especially if you're going to be reaching out to other cultures? It gets tighter and tighter and tighter what you could do to trigger somebody. You've all heard the jokes where if you burp at one place, it's a compliment, but at another place, it's an insult, after a meal. Like, I don't know, I heard that growing up as a kid. Some cultures, if you burp, that actually is a sign that you enjoyed the meal. I don't know if that's actually true.
It is.
Well, there you go. Because I question everything I heard when I was a kid because I was quite gullible. So anyway, yeah, I think I'll just leave it there. I kind of went around and around that hole, but I do have a good conversation to have with Sam about nailing down the context and usefulness of some of his practices. And I think in general, as a default, yeah, record everything, but not having good tools is not only a waste of bits and bytes, but a big waste of space. Like, what is the official story? Like, where do you go for the official story? What I think now? Do you have to follow my new channel, or are you going to follow the old stuff I did 2 years ago, which is completely misleading and wrong and been proven wrong? Is there any way for me to take down the stuff that I used to believe and now I know is wrong or think is wrong? Like, just a whole lot of questions there. So
Okay.
that's why I think a little bit of production goes a long way, and knowing what you're doing, and that leads into getting ready. So it depends if we're a show that's just off the cuff or it's a show that's actually trying to prepare and do something.
Alex, you had your hand up?
Yeah, this conversation we're having today is what I believe today, version 1. Version 1.001.
Okay, so I do recognize this is a valid and very valuable conversation, but it's actually not the focus of what I wanted to talk about. So may I go back to the intergenerational focus theme?
Yeah, I think I sidelined that as a topic for another day. There's a list of topics that conversations that we could have. It'd be good to see if we could.
I understand, yes.
Yeah.
And I do agree with you. We could be making better use of other facilities like Trello. Okay, so I wanted to share something that has been on my mind for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I was thinking, this was brought up by one of the things that was being said in the news. Now, I forget exactly what it was. But I was I remember now. It had just been reported for 2 or 3 days straight, and it's still true today, although it's not as prominent in the news, that part of the quote unquote recovery package that Congress or whomever authorized, well, it was like $2 or $3 trillion, I believe, or more, in here in the United States alone. But there's 522 billion of it that's unaccounted for, where the rumor is it's going to, Trump supporters, is going to the rich, it's going to various other sources. And I got as close to I ever get to being livid on this one particular theme. I'm so upset at the robbery, the out and out theft that our government is committing. And it's even blatant. It's out in the open. We got people here in the administration, the U.S. administration, talking about abolishing Social Security, which individuals have funded for decades. And they're talking about reducing benefits or taking those monies and doing other things with them, while at the same time, we got military budgets that are just obscene. How else can we talk about it? They're just obscene. And at the time, when I was in the kitchen and Ronnie was in the kitchen, she just said, just let the teenagers run the country. And that stopped me in my tracks, because it hit with me in this generational theme that I just brought up. So I got to thinking for a few hours that day, and I wrote up a blog entry that I just posted a link to in the chat transcript. And it's an idea I thought, which I was hoping would engage teens to give them their voice. And I thought, what if, and the background to this is, in the US, there's 2 chambers of legislators. There's one that's supposedly the House of Representatives. It's got 435 representatives. And in the Senate, there's 100, although that's about to change because I understand DC is about to become a state. So anyway, we have 435 plus 100. So pick a number, whether it's 435 or 535. I thought, what if we created a teen Congress and gave them the ability to meet, to debate, to deliberate, to decide, to recommend? What if we gave them that power? What if we gave them access to the right information and any other tools that they might want, without telling them how to do it? And as non-invasively as possible, give them a voice, give them a platform. So I actually thought about this. I wrote up this blog called Teen Congress, and I wrote up all of these questions. And then I went online to GoDaddy.com, and I thought, is teencongress.com already taken? Believe it or not, it was not already taken. So I bought the domain. So I'm so serious about this that I'm trying to figure out how to sustain it. And then I thought, well, what if, ideally we get 435 or 535 kids who want to do this, but what if more kids want to do this, especially after the first 3 or 6 or 9 or 12 months, and they actually come up with some recommendations. What I would love more than anything is for the recommendations, the bills, if you would, okay, coming out of Teen Congress, to be contrasted with the bills that are coming out of the quote unquote real Congress. I would just love for that to happen, because I would bet almost anything that Teen Congress initiatives and bills would make more sense than what's coming out of Congress today. And I'm willing to bet on that. So whether it's universal basic income, whether it's Medicare for all, whether it's workers' rights, whether it's women's rights, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's Confederacy statues, whether it's border control, I would just love for them to have deliberation in transparency on the record to actually come up with, and I know this has no legal binding, no legal authority, but wouldn't it be curious if they came up with 2 or 3 page bills, and when we took a look at what came out of the HR process and what came out of the Senate approval process, what if we were able to contrast that? Wouldn't that give the next generation a very strong voice? Now, teen is, of course, limiting it. Obviously there are other forums which could include more of the Gen X, Y, Z, whatever's. But I just thought Teen Congress was a cool domain that I just went ahead and purchased. So I'm writing on this thing up. So number one, I'd like to really work on this myself. Number two, I'm curious what your feedback is on this. Number three, I'm trying to figure out how to get it going so that it's sustainable. And in some respects, I don't know how to make it sustainable without some flow of funds, back and forth. I was thinking about the following model. I was thinking about, what if we made participation not free? In other words, I don't want people to just sign up for free and then not do anything. That would be a waste of the platform and a lot of static, a lot of noise. I want them to be serious, take this seriously. So something, I'm sure some of them buy sodas, some of them buy coffees, whatever. What if we made it something like a $10 participation or $5 or whatever we pick the number to be? And if they participate, if they write, if they comment, if they deliberate, if they actually speak, then their fees go down. We take that fraction of it in some portion and either return it to them, or better yet, put it into a fund which can actually, start supporting and funding other initiatives. And if they don't participate, that part of the funding comes to supporting the platform, supporting my time, supporting other people's time, supporting tools, etc. But let them control how that funding gets spent, so that if they come on board with whatever that number is, $1, $5, $10, whatever, and that they participate in every process, they edit documents, they revise documents, they share documents, whatever, okay, then all of that would be available to supporting whatever initiatives that they were in favor of, whether it's, defunding the police, whether it's some kind of other 501c3. That's the kind of model that I'm thinking about. While there's still some amount that would have to go towards, the actual infrastructure itself. So I'm trying to think through those thoughts. Alex, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that if the system was measuring the time they spent in the chat session, in the group doing something, then 1 hour a week might be enough to have the monthly fee delegated.
Yeah, something like that. I'm just curious about that feedback on that particular model. I don't know if that model exists elsewhere, but I'd like to see if it's kind of a reverse punishment. It's not really punishment. It's like, you get rewarded for showing up, for being active, and even if you don't, those funds are still put to good use in some very transparent way. You
Some
know,
groups are doing it with donations. They say when you make a donation, we'll match it. And the cause that they're putting it to gets double the amount.
Yeah.
But that's not.
I'm familiar with that model. Yeah. Okay. So I did post the link. I did call this blog Teen Congress. It's probably 3 or 4 inches up now in the chat transcript. I'm curious to see at some point if you guys want to give me some feedback on it. It'd be cool if you actually gave feedback on the blog itself. I have Discus hooked up, so you can actually, if you have a Discus account, you can actually give me feedback there right away. And it's easy to get a Discus account, by the way. So, or you can give me feedback here. I'm curious, just like Alice did right now. So anyway, this is what's been on my mind about how to reach intergenerationality. By the way, I do have thoughts on the other direction as well. I'd like to get a lot of retired people who are, you know, like not, how should I say this politically correct? In other words, they have so much knowledge, they have so much guidance that if we put and I know there are other nonprofits doing this already, who put them in touch with, let's say, younger folks who want to know more about either business or, you know, wood carving or art or, you know, whatever it is, but let that intergenerationality, you know, really take effect so that these people are not just playing chess or playing checkers at an old folks home. I know that's an extreme exaggeration. Sorry about that. But that they're actually still able to engage and they don't have to commit to a time schedule of 40 hours a week, but they can still make an impact. I'm still trying to figure out, you know, whether we can do that. So I do have ideas on that side as well. But right now, the focus for today that I wanted to bring was this Teen Congress idea. Over.
Would you make that a United States Team Congress or a global Team Congress?
That's a good question. I would like to make it an international one. I would like to make it so that teens could talk to teens. And it might be that from my understanding, the requests that I would make would be to address issues that are particularly focusing the US Congress at the moment, okay? But I don't see any reason why teens from other places couldn't participate. I would like to do that myself. Over. Although I had one other thought related to that, which is if a lot of people did participate, I would love for the representation in each group of 435 or 535 to closely match that of, you know, the representatives in the actual Congress. For example, 35, you know, representatives from California, you know, 10 from Washington, you know, 2 from, you know, other small states. But I think I'm not going to be able to do that the first time around. So I'd like to be more inclusive, but perhaps, you know, if there was a lot of interest, we could get closer to those kinds of ratios. Over.
I'm thinking about this select button on the site that could allow them to click on domestic issues in Congress or international issues.
And I would let them decide. Like I say, I wouldn't want to put too many restrictions. I'd like to just gather them, give them the tools to deliberate, and request that they come up with recommendations, okay? And, you know, it may be that some of these groups spend 80% of the time trying to figure out whether they want to be on Zoom versus, you know, WhatsApp. I don't know. Or, you know, some of them could be very, very focused and churn out, you know, 1 recommendation per month, you know. I'd have no idea. But I'm trying not to be too prescriptive. I just want to enable and empower them.
They've got lots of apps. Young people are using all sorts of apps these days.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I don't want to specify what platforms they use, you know. I want them to use what's effective for them. All I'm requesting is at the end of it, you know, there's a recommendation, and that's the request, you know, and that it be focused on one particular topic, and they can take on as many as they want. First, I'll probably put together a list of 12 things that they could go after, you know, and a recommended time frame, whether it's 4 weeks or, you know, 3 months or whatever it is, whatever they want to do. But at the end, this is what I'd like to see. I'd like to see a recommendation, okay? A bill, if you would. And I would love to contrast that with what comes out of Congress. I think that if this thing takes off, it'll get covered by the press, something crazy, okay? Especially if the ideas are even halfway intelligible, which I expect them to be. Okay. I think the teens are way smarter than we give them credit for. They're way more concerned. They're way more connected. They're way more aware than we were, I would say, as that age. And I'm speaking than we now, yes. So that's the crux of the idea. I don't have it fully fleshed out, but I'm really trying to take some active steps each week. I've actually talked to Ronnie about it, and she actually says she would get some of her friends to participate. Kayla, I don't know if you've been able to hear. I'm also particularly interested in your response because you're a teacher.
I've just been eating. I have several thoughts about that. I think it's, first of all, overall, I think it's brilliant. I do believe we need the youth. We need their voices. We need them to be have the habit of being able to speak and be heard. The only thing that just comes to my mind too is, at their age, they yet don't have the wisdom, their ideas are very valuable. I don't know why, but I'm stuck on the part where you bridge the youth to something as huge as government and Congress. Because we do need people who have the wisdom, who have the longevity and experience. But it's a great practice for sure. And the participation level, it's almost kind of like like-minded adults. When we all have a like-minded purpose to put together, we get together and when we act on it. So I'm just thinking of, where you get like-minded youth to be able to jump on board with something like this. And I can't help but think about my kids, and right now how much they miss their friends, and school's a good place to start, to gather the youth, if you will. Does that make sense?
Let me see if I understand you right. I think that if I'm hearing you, some of the issues that I was asking them to provide feedback on maybe ones where they don't have all the perspective. If I might be putting words in your mouth, that's just what I'm trying to confirm. And if so, what if we let them select from topics that are more relevant to them, whether it's consent, whether it's driving age, whether it's drinking age, whether it's weed, whether it's other drugs, whether it's the homeless, whether it's UBI, whether it's, wow, I just thought of another one. Who's got custody in divorce situations? Do they have a voice? Anyway, yes, I'm only suggesting these things because there's a lot of issues that we need clarity on. And I'm not clear yet, unless the younger generation are just speaking on these platforms where I just don't participate or I'm not aware of, and they're actually coming up with great ideas. But I'd like to get those ideas out in the open, actually, sell them or represent them or market them as bills, as recommendations that Teen Congress has come up with. And, I would just love for something like that to have a name, to have a brand that then, Newsweek or Time or ABC or whoever else could say, this came out of Teen Congress this week. Here's what they recommend. And then some bloggers can go and say, here's what they recommend. Here's what Congress recommends. And I'm also hoping there's a secondary or tertiary effect, which is not all teens just only want to talk to teens. I'm hoping some of them, like some of us, want to also reach intergenerationally. Some of them probably have good relationships with their grandparents. Some of them probably have good mentors or music teachers or coaches, or martial arts instructors that they respect. So I'm hoping that happens organically so that it's then hopefully infused into this process. I don't want to prescribe it though.
No, I think that's great. I mean, I would love to hear what the youth have to say and the ideas that they have, because their minds are not yet so brainwashed. Yeah, that's a good project, Sam. But yeah, that's the only thing that just kind of comes to mind is it would have to be very structured for people like us to be able to listen to them, and for them to have the credibility that people who have the longevity and the wisdom and in the years, to take their ideas into consideration. If that makes any sense.
It does. And as you're speaking, I'm thinking of the following. And as you can see from barn raising and GCC, I'm leery of too much structure, but I'm also aware that too little structure doesn't get things done. I think I've come to that conclusion myself. So I'm trying to figure out whether we just give a number of models. Would you like to take the UN model? Would you like to take the US model? Would you like to take the UK parliamentary model? Would you like to take The Hague as a model? Would you like to take a benevolent monarchy as a model? Would you like to take Singapore as a model? Would you like to take Oslo as a model, Or would you like to create your own model? And I'd like to sort of see if they gravitate. Now, if we got millions of people applying, yeah, they can each go towards whichever one suits them. But in the initial stage, I'm thinking, maybe there's a group deliberation process that can hopefully quickly come at how the first instance of this is going to run itself. And clearly my intent is to learn from this so that if it stays and if it survives and if it becomes viable, then it does things better and better and hopefully branches out into other ways of doing things as experiments. That's what I'm hoping.
And you know what? Children love structure. I mean, they thrive on structure.
So I'm thinking teens. Now, there may be a different group that reaches out to kids. Are your kids teens yet? The oldest one is what, 11 or 12?
I have a preteen, and I've worked with teenagers, and they're very much still children. Just letting you know, they still love that structure. But the good thing about teenagers is they have these wonderful ideas to branch off. So, yeah.
Alex, you have your finger up?
I was talking to Peter Jones, who was a professional in England with in the media and in communications, and he mentioned that the secret sauce was feedback, which I believe when kids get together, they come up with all sorts of shit. But if they've got the right contact, well, they are interlinking with each other and they're using the apps to communicate. Why can't we have a thought space map with the bubbles on it, showing what those apps are and where they are and how many people are on each app? That would give us an insight, whether it's, I don't know what the names of them are, there's lots of them. Over.
Yeah, I'd like to ask.
If Alex thinks there should be a thwart map for that, I would nominate him in going ahead and trying to build one. I think if it's not there, at least try to find, because there's a lot of groups that could connect together with this mapping. It's interesting he mentions mapping. I'm kind of thinking that that's the way to keep the memory in a sense-making way. And I was also thinking about, when you mentioned models of what they would like to do as far as structure, would they like to do it with which type of governance model, which kind of gets to the GCC foundation. I think that it really depends on the situation. And there should be this healthy feedback conversation going all the time, which I think Kayla's talking about, So there's like the two sections on the map. There's the one where it's bubbling and brewing and people are interested and they're learning, sort of like training, studying, YouTube videos, whatever it is. And then something happens and you actually need, like
well, you said we already have something happening with wicked problems, climate change, and all these things. You said maybe 12 ideas you could suggest. And then the idea came, well, what do they find are the issues that they should be talking about? And that's kind of was my first impression. Like, is there any matching between, you know, what we consider adult problems for the next generation, or just, you know, more trivial problems that might be more on the side of luxury or convenience? You know, how can we get better service as opposed to how can we, you know, fix some large global climate problem or hunger or whatever. So the one that comes to mind is the Taiwan incident, where I think it was called the Sunflower Movement, where they were trying to negotiate some trade agreement with China, and you know, the universities got involved, and you know, sort of almost like the Greta Thunberg thing, where they were getting behind her with an issue, but they actually had an issue that was burning, and that's what pulled them together. So I just, you know, there's that kind of a thing where it's immediate, and then there's the other thing. Okay, well, there's a bunch of people that are under, you know, a certain age and over a certain age that have more free time. The people in the middle are the middle class, busy trying to make ends meet. They might not have a whole lot of spare time to be putting into initiatives, but yeah, I know some people who've been thinking about this as well, and it is an interesting topic. So looking for models that have already happened and what context fits what kind of a situation. And if the meme is teen Congress, then what came to my mind was they could mirror the issues that are important to them, and they could build their own repository. Like, I find it interesting that, and maybe it's just my ignorance, how well documented is what is going on, and the trails of, is it just an entry and we're working on this item? Because I know there's some sites that actually vote on, you know, what people have said and whether they're lying or not, and there's other sites that keep track of all the bills that are going through Congress. And I'm saying this is as a non-US citizen, but you know, there are places that do track all of this stuff. So how could you leverage these models and build say a teen memed alternative view to something that's already there, that's already important, that already is being discussed? Because I think if you could piggyback off of things, that would be the structure that, or other models. Otherwise, I think you're just in that YouTube learning phase, going around the getting ready part. And yeah, I really think this has been a productive session because Sam did come prepared with something, and I think that's an interesting thing, that we have better shows when that happens. My question is there a way to track this project? You know, I know you made a blog on it and you're just putting it out there. You bought a domain name, so it's all kind of spirit of the moment, but it sounds like it's something very dear to you. So I'm wondering if there's going to be like a Trello entry or a Sana board or something like that. That you
Yes.
follow through on.
At the very least, there will be a GitHub project or a GitLab project. So that's on the way as well. Over.
Well, I added that image in the chat. I added a link to the file that I uploaded the image in the chat, and that image can be used on the Trello board or on the Basecamp or wherever, because it's got some parts on it that are missing, that are blank, that need filling in, and they anyone can make suggestions there, which would help with the current conversation, I think. Over.
Okay. Hey, I'm aware that we're coming up on 90 minutes, and 2 points. I know some of you have to leave. I heard that. But also, this is the point in which we normally go into a retrospective. So since I'm normally the host and objective third party, I normally run the poll. I am not, you know, impartial this time. So I was wondering how you guys want to do the retrospective. Should I go ahead and do the polling questions again? Or how would you guys like to do the retrospective? Should we do a retrospective?
I don't think it's worth it when there's so few people involved in the vote. Votes give you a result when they're based on a huge number of responses. You get an idea of what the feeling is in the community. I mean, we're focused here in a microcosm. We're in a silo. And so we can all agree with each other. We're preaching to the choir. Anyway, just a thought. Over.
Maybe. I mean, last week we did have some no votes, so I thought that that was still informative to me. Stacy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, so if I were going to vote about the first question about focus, I probably would say that no, we didn't. There was part where we were totally focused, and then there was a part where we split. But what I think is more important to the whole thing that I'll also add is why, when the focus shifted, did that happen? And what comes up for me all the time when I see it happening, it's usually because there's a greater energy behind trying to clear up a misunderstanding than maintaining focus. So I just wanted to add that that's when I think it happens, because I think that's the more important part of whether or not we focused.
Kayla?
And I did want to, before, if you ask those questions, I wanted to add one more thing that for the co-creation piece, this is a wonderful idea. And I just went ahead and dropped you a link from the American Red Cross in terms of structure. There's a lot of really good models in play and structures in play that you could always branch from that have been working. So for the co-creation piece, I know this might be a good thing for you to look into when structuring this project, which is brilliant. I'd love to be a part of it.
By the way, just one more thing on this one. I am hoping, even though I'm asking that we not impose structure on them, I am hoping that there is a network of adults and other, let's say, people who have the wisdom that was mentioned, who want to support the group of teens who do gather themselves to do this, not as managers or leaders or anything like that, but as supporting references and perspectives who would want to unblock them in some of their ways of whatever they want to unblock, So I'm hoping that there is a group of, hopefully I will see us, who want to do something like that. And I would love to see that. That would be one part of this intergenerationality that would come out of this. Over. Alex. You're on mute.
I heard something funny about a guy at the footy. In Australia, they call it the footy. In America, they call it the league or something, the football gridiron. But in Australia, it's the footy, and the big footy match where they have the commentator and the spectator and all these other taters, lots of taters, including the facilitator and the agitator. A chat session.
But the primary constituents are the kick-taters? Sorry.
Facilitator.
That was a poor attempt at a joke. Stacy, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I keep thinking about the Parkland kids. I had gone to the march that they organized in Washington, and it was like one of the most organized events I'd ever been to. And they had original artwork. It was really impressive. And from the little bit I know about it, they ran the show. They reached out to parents and older people, but they called the shots. And I think there's something to that, because part of the beauty about being young is that you're not convinced that things won't work a certain way. And that's a really good thing. So many times, I still hear it now, but I've always, heard you look at the world through rose-colored glasses. And I just think that's the most horrible thing to say to somebody, that don't try to solve problems based on possibility. You know, your possibilities are limited. Now go solve the problem. So I'm just curious. It would be interesting to talk to some of those organizers because they had many different views within the organization. It wasn't like, you know, everybody agreed with what should be done in terms of legislation and things like that. And yet they were able to work together with people that had different viewpoints. So I'd like to know how that naturally happened.
Yeah. Again, I don't view this thought as unique. I do think that it's in a milieu of other kind of initiatives having to do with intergenerationality and the youth and the voices. But I do want to give it some thought and connect with it. And I do think that, you know, thinking about it in Teen Congress terms perhaps has a image of what it might want to convey.
Do you know Alexa Penn?
Yeah, he showed up at this at least once or twice, and in fact, I think he's in the regulars group in the message, in the Facebook
Oh,
Messenger.
he might. You know what? He might be. I would suggest reaching out to him because we had spoken about something that's similar. I don't want to speak for him because I might get it messed up, but I think that there might be some interest here and some overlap with something he's already working on.
That's a good weaving, so thank you. Alex.
I want to make a suggestion that this is racial, this is age discrimination, but if the people joining this Congress are over, say, 35, their annual fee or monthly fee should be double the younger people's fee. Over.
I'll let them decide that. Kayla.
Stacy, when you mentioned the Parkland youth, I just got got an idea that I wanted to run by you, Sam. I love the whole, you know, what was her name? Emma.
I can't think of the last name.
Yeah, how she ran the march and she spoke for her school, and it was great. And a lot of people were wondering, well, how come Parkland has a lot of the attention? There have been mass shootings everywhere. Well, that area in and of itself, it was a very affluent area. A lot of the children there were very articulate, and it was amazing to see them march and organize and get together. But in considering the other schools that got shot up, there aren't very many youth who have that ability because of the areas that they're coming from. So I was just thinking, Sam, it would be great to include youth from other socioeconomic backgrounds. I mean, they may be struggling with problems, you know, obviously they're struggling with problems their parents are struggling with. And kind of to voice what Alex said last week, it's just important for everybody to have that voice and to start them very young and to know, hey, here's a safe forum where you can speak your mind and talk about these problems and vote on something, you know, that your country is involved in and the world is involved in. I think that would be very powerful. So, you know, when you do get this together, I would love to see youth from other countries and other socioeconomic backgrounds specifically.
Heck of a good suggestion. I would love, in fact, part of presenting it here is an invitation to work with me on making this real, you know? And so I love the suggestions that are coming through, and I will note them, and to my best ability, I will follow up on them. Because, yeah, I mean, I'm going on record now as this is something I want to put some time into and try and make real.
I'll go with the retrospective. I kind of already led into it, saying that, you know, Sam came with something, he was prepared, and I felt like that really made things productive and motion forward. Definitely, I feel that. As far as was the focus, we had two different focuses. Kind of, we had a lead-in background story that brought in some fundamental things, and I think so. We focused on fundamentals a little bit, as far as, you know, what was privacy and being on the record and editing things, brought up by, I think, Stacy. So Sam touched on fundamentals, so we kind of focused on that, but that's still on the map of concern. The question to me, did we switch focus in in a smooth manner so nobody was lost. And Sam definitely did that by saying, well, that's not what I came here to talk about. And I definitely said that, it'd be something worth, discussing more at another time. So I think we did switch well. So I don't think there's any reason to have a single focus, just like Sam's mentioning that there's nothing wrong with mentioning things about other things that might not be present, because that, leaves a lot of things off the table that you could discuss, people and things or whatever. And so the tool, I think, is important. I'm getting out of the retrospective, but I think it's an important thing if Sam's going to track this project. And I think Git is a great place because it has revision history and a place where many people can, and I think it has a meta message when it comes to issues. What if the government logged all their issues in something like GitHub? And like people could go and look at them and they could say, oh, this is closed, or this has been superseded. That is part of the issue. It's the filtering of what needs to be done, and people to, give their opinions on how it might be solved. How many things are broken compared to how many resources we have to fix it? There's all kinds of questions there, and measuring and auditing the context of what is most important to deal with now, and what's a luxury, and how do you split your time between those things? Who has time to deal with them? So yeah, it would be interesting if things were logged. So back to the retrospective, I think we had great focus. And I also think that we had collaboration because it was definitely geared towards moving forward. And I think a lot of people here have suggestions to actually collaborate on making this idea more defined. So yeah, I think it was really good. Was there another question, Sam? I forget.
Well, if you want, I can send those polling questions if you want to do that real quickly. It should take
No, that's all right. I think we could do it manually, but
the first one was, did we focus? The second was, did the moderation assist us in attaining that focus?
Yeah.
And the third one was, did we co-create with focus?
Yeah, so I think the middle question is the whole point of the experiments, of trying to figure ways to focus moderation. And I think that's kind of looking at the details of how we could determine that is where we might be falling down. But at the same time, I think having the experiments is where we're really experiencing what can work. So it's a trade-off where I like to have things more classified. Like you say, the 3 questions. I would like to see more than just 3 questions coming out as we gather and move forward on the second question, but I'll just leave that. So yeah, great show. Thanks.
Any other thoughts? I'll have one then. In the documents that I normally prepare post-session, usually there's a section for follow-up or action items or to-dos. And I don't usually have a lot of them. I don't necessarily take the time to go through and say, this is what people ought to do. I don't prescribe that. I do note some things for myself sometimes. This is one where I definitely have at least a half a dozen follow-up action items that I'll include in that particular document. So some of you who offered, I will be following up with you. Thank you.
Are you going to put the Git are you going to make a temporary GitHub spot and point to that from the document? Because I think
because that's where I'd like to start putting together some guidelines, principles, get some discussion around it, make it open source, have other people comment on it, have contributors come in and say, hey, how about this? Connect to that. I'm actually going to try and put together the 9 artifacts in support of this. So that's going to be one of the group memory locations. So yes, Colin, you are resonant with that idea. Yes.
Yeah. So basically, this is a highlighting of something that's growing somewhere else, which is great.
Yeah. Right now, it's a tumor in my head, but hoping it'll go elsewhere as well. Any other thoughts? Particularly if you're aware, like these references to the Hague and to the Red Cross are references to places that I'm going to go and do some research and try and make some connections. So if you have any other those kind of references, that's going to be part of my homework. Hopefully there will be us, so I can say this is going to be our homework, but at least mine.
I think there's been quite a few global youth summits, that sort of thing. But not one specifically designed for Congress that I know of. So good luck. And let me know if there's anything I can do to help.
I will, Alex. Thanks for offering. Part of what really, sorry, Tees, let me say one thing. Part of what really excites me about this is I am looking forward to seeing these recommendations and bills get published, and for the public to be able to consume them, for the mass media to consume them, because I think there will be an inevitable contrast with what comes out of here versus what comes out of quote unquote real Congress. I would love to have that national debate. Yeah, Tees.
Well, it depends on if this idea comes from the youth themselves, how it comes from you. So my Prime Minister asked the youth on comments on how we act in the COVID crisis a few weeks ago. Now we're almost out of it, unlike USA, but we're still having the virus, but the youth had to respond. So it depends now on the response of the youth, how they react to all the policies. And they don't come up with, say, a model UN to reenact Congress or something like that. The question is, will they come with such idea? So can you ask them to come with an idea to participate maybe? So what's the basic idea behind what you like to do? And on top of that, I'm not native in English. And so we're doing that in The Hague. So this is in English, but depends also on the mastery of English. So we'll get good education. The youth can get in, but many people will be left out because of not knowing the knowledge. They will not have interpreters so much as the UN has. So it has to be in English mainly.
Yeah.
So that's the comments.
Definitely valid comments. That's why, my understanding is primarily English. So that's one reason it may be unfairly swayed towards just US at the moment. But definitely, I would love to see it grow so that we could have other like models in other languages in other countries. But I think I don't want to dream about that before I start getting, make the small thing work first, hopefully. We have 10 more minutes, so we could hang out and say more, or, hey, Alex, you go.
When you said start small and see what happens, basic small business advice I've been hearing over the years. Because start small, get something going first, and then scale it up later. So if you begin by envisioning a global network and you start with a tiny group, you've got to build in the scalability factor from the beginning, if you can. Over.
Yeah, those are top of mind for me. You can probably, from what you know of me, surmise that, I think about scalability. I think about these kinds of collective intelligence issues. So there's a lot of factors that I've not yet put into this discussion, but I've done that in previous discussions as well. Somebody said something about other kinds of activities. I think it might have been Colin, which is really, really key. I'm not expecting they all want to sit for 2 hours at a time in a Zoom situation, talking to each other, right? This is one of the reasons that I especially enjoy the fact that my daughter will cook with me every other night or so, because it's a kind of activity that's not so formal. You're not sitting down. You're not fidgeting with your fingers. You're actually able to actually do something and talk at the same time. Ping pong is similar to that as well. By the way, she's now doing daily, she's putting an hour each day into learning HTML and CSS and JavaScript and forms. And I think that's really cool as well. So we're spending time doing that also. So yes, Colin, I appreciate that point about it being more than just meetings and drudgery and talking heads. Sorry to imply that this is the way, okay? I'd love for us to be able to cook together, really. In fact, I still hope some of you will come visit.
The question is it interesting? And sometimes that question changes from interesting to important, and sense of duty comes in. So those are a couple of motivators. But without it being interesting or a sense of duty, you're pretty well going to be sideswiped by the next soundbite that comes along, I think.
I agree.
So yeah, I think that this forum is interesting because we can visualize this. You know, I think each one of us has a vision of what this space could be for us, and I think articulating that better is something we could and should work towards. I know I am. But again, it comes down to how much time I have. I still feel like I'm in the middle class, and this is kind of like my luxury thing. And what other things are going to come by in my life that's going to knock this out? And I find the things that are going to stay are the mini projects that I might get involved in. Even if I don't come to the actual Saturday, there's probably, you know, a lot of relations that have been made out of this show that continue on. I call it a show, but it's a meeting show. It's many things. So I don't mean to put a label on it, but I think it means a little bit different to each person that's here. And it meant something different when it started. And I think what maintains it is a commitment from Sam to see through collaboration for coexistence, co-visioning, and the Doug Engelbart view. So, you know, that really attracts me because I see that as something that holds the mobile up. You know, there's some method to the madness, and he's trying to hang that different ways. Some with, you know, and I think bringing structure in is important, but in the amount that it's agreed upon and changeable. It's the authoritative absolutes that I think kill stuff. You know, if people have a set of norms, they should abide by them to minimize chaos, keep it interesting. And if there's some rules that are made that don't fit, like for example, Alex said that doesn't include old people, they said, well, we never thought old people would be interested, bring as many as you want, right? Like easy. So there might be false boundaries. So there always is boundaries made by the context and constraints. I think the point that Kayla was making about teenagers not having wisdom is probably not recognizing all of the constraints. And I think when Stacy says she made adversity to, you know, why not try the possibilities? And I'm thinking, well, once you understand, I think it's more of a question of what things are possible to change. So you actually focus on something, not just anything's possible, but okay, it's not possible now because of these constraints, but what if all the people in China revolt and all of a sudden China becomes a democracy? Like, what if then? Like, what if all the Chinese, and you know, what if all the democracies figure out that this is the best way to live as a monkey or humans or whatever you want to call us, and we actually do get our stuff together? Because what I see is a whole world of difference everywhere as you go, based on culture, based on what they think is better. So an organization local is way different than an organization that's global still. And I think as we talk and write down the issues so that everybody can see them, I think the important stuff should bubble to the top, and we should start to find out that, you know, women are able to drive cars if they want to. You know, that's okay. Everybody has a right to be educated. Skin color isn't a predeterminate. What was the joke I heard about that? It'd be interesting if we prejudiced everybody on their hair color like we do skin color. You know, that would just be ridiculous, right? Like, could you imagine, oh, that person's blonde, so, you know, we can't. So yeah, there's a lot of worldview and conscious things that have to change. And if the children or the teens are the in on that, I think Sam's got something there, because they definitely see things differently than older traditions. And some of these old ways of thinking just need a few generations to die off. I've heard that somewhere. So yeah, all the power to you, Sam.
Thanks, fella. One thing before you interject, I'm learning language from Ronnie. Like, you know, a year or two ago, I didn't know what SMH means. You guys know what SMH means? Kayla might.
Shake my head.
Right.
Shake my head.
You know what POS means?
Piece of shit.
The other meaning. The other meaning. You know what POS means? Parent over shoulder.
Ah, right.
Somebody parent over shoulder, so they can't actually, you know, say exactly what they mean. So there's a lot of language I'm learning from my kids, and I would never know this unless I had a teenager.
CTN. Can't talk now.
Yeah. Urban Dictionary for those people that want to learn all that stuff.
Right. I mean, it's an older term, but you guys know what TLDR means?
What?
TLDR?
ELDR.
Yeah. Colin, you might.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Talk like Donald Trump.
It means too long, didn't read.
Yeah.
In response to a long post.
Can I say something about what Colin Kilburn mentioned? Is it interesting? He posed the question, is it interesting? And would it be interesting for a young person to take time out of their busy schedule to get involved? And I think that when people hear their own name, their ears pick up, and they see their own name in print, and they hear their own suggestion mentioned on the screen. This is exciting because it makes you inclusive, includes you in the process.
Yeah,
So
I do find reflecting somebody does have that effect. Like I found that with the maps, but there's also that line of what's too much information. Have you had quality feedback to make the stuff on the map worth sharing?
Okay. Well, I can make a can of baked beans interesting because I've been working in the kitchen. But that's another story. Sam.
Alex, something you said connected to something I remember. Well, even you said it. That Colin said that then perked me up. It said that, I should be out there right now. I should be out there right now collecting teens to help me define and create this thing. I don't want to define, create it, and then launch it and communicate to teens. I should involve them right now. What more perfect time now than they're at home? They got a lot of free time. They're not on buses on the way to school, and back all the time. And this is actually a perfect opportunity. That's a way to reformulate the construction of this thing.
That coupled with other examples that succeeded or failed for certain reasons within certain contexts. Yeah. Because you don't have to start from scratch.
I think there should be 3 teams, but maybe concentrate on 2 first. And one of them is people over 35, the other one's for people under 35, and see how it goes. Then link them together via the interest, the thought space bubbles.
I think it's almost under 25 and over 40, 45.
I was almost taking it literally as to say cap it at 19 and make it 13 to 19, but I'm wondering about that.
Well, the guy that I worked with has thought about this and doing community work with schools and things, mentoring and different things, collaborative thoughts. And he's narrowed it down to 2 groups because the middle group is just too busy, to focus on. Now that may be a mistake, but for what he's doing, he's noticed the target market, that the middle aged people are just too busy raising kids. Like, Kayla's an exception to the rule here. But people who have a lot of kids, they got a lot of things going on. I don't know. That was just one suggestion.
So I really appreciate these suggestions. We are getting to the top of the hour. So I just wanted to ask one more time, does anybody else have any feedback on the 3 focus questions or the moderation itself? Did we focus? Did the moderation help? Did we co-create? Anybody have any other thoughts? And I'll still leave the session going for as long as people want to stay, but at least it's the top of the hour. So, hey, Kayla, I know you wanted to go, but I really appreciate you hanging out here until now.
I'm staying.
Everybody, but you specifically said that you might be leaving.
It's 10 hours.
Well, I was gonna check out this dancer, but the times are all messed up. And she, I watched her a little bit while people were talking, and yeah, that was fine. So I'm staying.
I'm going, so it was good seeing you all.
Hey, thanks, Stacey. Good feedback.
I'm going to be in touch with you, Sam. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Okay. You had your hand up? Or are you saying goodbye? Okay. Okay. Hey, thanks for all of you for listening. I really appreciate all the feedback. And it sounds like support to me, so I'm going to take it as support unless it comes across otherwise. But yeah, I'm pretty jazzed about this idea. I want to keep it going. Okay.
Yeah,
Anything else?
that's a big project.
Yeah. I do know that it's going to take a lot of co-creation. So I don't think I'll do it on my own. That's not the point.
I connected you. I suggest a connection with Michelle Baron, who has 3 children She lives in Falls Church, Virginia. It's in Facebook. You can connect with her. She knows me well enough, but I don't know if she has much time. So it depends on her to connect with you and the idea. But she's near Washington, and I mentioned I think she's governmental involved somehow, but not to be mentioned actually. So but she's a good.
If you have the correct spelling of her name, I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
Oh, can I check out with this? Check out what's this thought about the distributed analytics algorithm that measures people's involvement in a group or team or project and awards them a score accordingly to how many times they logged in and said something or posted something. Depending on what they did, the score would up or down, increase or reduce. If they haven't been in for a month, the score will reduce. And the fees, monthly fees, would increase. That would get rid of a lot of people quickly, I think. So that might not be such a good idea. I don't know. Anyway, that's me checking it over.
Yeah, if you have a reference to something I could research, that would be appreciated, Alex. Thanks.
I could see this project taking over barn raising actually, because it's got a lot of things that are important. Like focusing on the youth for one is very, very important, because it's their world to grow into.
Yeah.
And I think, it ticks a lot of boxes, and it'd be good to have some discussions with some people who've come through GCC in the past. I've got a number of people that would be interesting if we had like a few, I don't know, fish bowls or presentations on what's been done, go over the GitHub thing a little bit, and then pull these people in and see if you can get some of their interest. I'm thinking of William Charlton and Aaron Perlmutter, I think. Perlmutter, yeah. I think this could be a nice lighthouse to a lot of interesting projects of, my question is what's going on? How do I understand what is going on? And how do you unveil this unless you start to dig into certain areas? Different focus groups would dig into different areas. Okay. How do you fund it? How do you fund it and make it fun like a game, I guess is another question. So you need people who are detailed oriented like me and other people who are more socially oriented, like some people we've seen come through the group. I think it takes a whole lot of angles. I think as well, Tees, wasn't there someone, Diana, who was into this kind of stuff too, or maybe not so much? I don't know.
You mean from
Uganda?
Africa?
Is it? Yeah. You're just trying to reach out, and she's definitely somebody who seems to be working with community and youth. So just tap those people. Yeah, Diana Kolek. At least she might know somebody, so I think that's the idea. Anyway, thanks.
Okay.
Well, the importance for Diana in Nairobi is that she is in the university, so she can connect very well. So she will be informed for Kenya. So it's a good idea.
Okay. A lot of follow-up then. I will start either a Google Doc or a README in GitHub and start collecting. Everybody can start contributing. Okay, so.
So are we going to have like a half an hour dedicated to this every barn raising? Would that be? Because
I'm not yet ready to say that. If it's that big, I would propose it being a separate thread on its own. But if you're open to that, I would like to set it up as a separate time slot.
I think 15, 20 minutes updates or whatever. And then like if you could pull in 2 or 3 people to a discussion, you could announce it, say we're going to have a.
Right. So maybe that's a good case. So maybe for the next 2 or 3 weeks, those of us who are active on it can summarize for those who are not for about 15 minutes or so as part of barn raising. And if it looks like it's taking on a life of its own, then at that point, I'll probably split it out into a separate forum. Because I think barn raising in and of itself is still a thread that is worth pursuing, in my opinion, in my view. Okay. All right. Any other thoughts? Peace.
The USA is huge enough, So if you can do it for the USA, you are strong enough already, because all these nations are looking to the USA. So if you can get it done, like we in The Hague with the United Nations youth, then people will look at it.
Yeah. By the way, another thought I hadn't mentioned is if we get way more, I think I may have mentioned it, that we can have more than one of these teen congresses, you know, and eventually over time, maybe there's one that's just US members. But initially, I think it's good not to make that a requirement. But if we do get enough people, maybe there's another one just focused on African nations, or just one in even Australia, you know, we'll see. I
Well,
mean,
I like the meme.
my dream will have been realized by that time if we have those problems.
I do like the meme of Team Congress, because it almost like it's you could put a prefix on it for all kinds of different ideas. And
Yeah.
I think the power or the message is that it actually has a legislative slant to it. Like it's geared towards actually serious problems making a difference in governance and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Initially, of course, it has no authority, but I think the merits of its outcomes will take on its own authority, in my opinion.
Yeah, serious shit we should be considering, basically. Got the
Yeah.
word should in there.
I would just love for its equivalent to show just how corrupt and evil Mitch McConnell has been acting, for example, you know, in the U.S. Congress and others of his ilk. But now I'm starting to prescribe a little bit too much.
I will put the word Teen Congress to Michelle Baron, so she will know about it. So if you take a few minutes, then
Yeah.
you can connect her
And
afterwards.
if you give her the link to my Teen Congress blog, I would love to get her feedback on that. Those are just initial.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have it open still. I'm not sure. I have it. I think I have it.
By the way, that blog is hosted
I
on.
have it. Yeah, I have it. Yeah, I have it. I share it with her. I have it open. Yeah. So I can
GitHub is
share
a
it.
pretty fast site, so I think that's why, you know, I've chosen that to host my blog, and it'd come up pretty quickly.
I'll share it with her.
I'm excited. Thank you all. Kayla, what's his name again? Sorry, I forgot.
This is Maxwell.
Maxwell. How old are you?
9.
9. Okay, cool.
You
Does
just
your mom tell you what we talk about here on Saturday and Sunday mornings? It's okay. You don't have to answer any questions.
parsing him.
Okay.
He's so weird. He gets shy. This is my award-winning dancer right here.
I have ice cream.
Does he have videos online?
Oh yeah, he does have videos.
Maxwell, can I see your videos?
Yeah, show me the competitions, the one where you won first place.
No.
Hey, and just in case, I'm going to be a proud dad also. I'm going to share my daughter's Instagram account, so hopefully you guys can see it. I'll post it in the Facebook Messenger, though, because I don't want to keep people online if you don't want to while I'm looking for that URL.
I was going to say, I'm going to have my 12-year-old look at your blog, and then I'll give you his feedback.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I think I'm almost there. Yeah, I think I just found it. Here it is. So I can put it into the chat. So her ID or her account on Instagram, it is just that one girl. So that's her Instagram account. And so she posts art daily. Hopefully some of you are seeing it now already. So she posted an anime, you know, young anime style.
I'm going to show this to Damien too. He loves
Does he draw?
No, but he likes to look at anime.
Yeah.
He tries.
My daughter's got me watching Avatar: The Last Airbender with her. So every other night we watch 2 or 3 episodes. Every other night, interspersed between that, we watch episodes of the old 1972 show, Kung Fu. That was conceived by Bruce Lee.
Some of them remind me of Avatar characters.
Yeah, I mean, she's definitely into the anime drawing style, but she's experimenting with subtle little differences. Anyway, it's those kinds of drawing sessions that she watches on YouTube and she gets ideas from, and now she's making up her own characters quite a bit. She's got her own universe where all these characters live in. Anyway, thank you all. I really, really, really appreciate the session. I really appreciate the feedback and a lot of follow-ups. So I'm definitely going to be very active. And for some of you who have indicated a positive reactions, I will be following up with you.
Well, thanks, Sam. This has been great.
Thanks.
I should go.
I'm going to go get breakfast and deal with the puppies. The puppies are yelling for attention right now. So
Good to see everyone. Good to hear you, Colin. And I'm sure I'll see you guys tomorrow.
all right. Thank you very much again.
See you later.
Bye for now. Should I leave this open in case any of you guys want to?
Bye. I'm gone.